Okay, wonderful. All right. Hello, hello, everyone. I am Tammy Brunk, of course, Earth Sky Woman, and I'm so excited to see your beautiful faces here. It's wonderful to see those of you who are on video, because part of why I'm doing this today is because there's so much that I do that's just one way, right? And I feel you all out there, and I get a lot of emails and all of that, but I love to have this kind of community gathering time and just to touch in with people as well and see what's the pulse, what are people feeling. And of course, I'm going to be sharing, as I mentioned, about the trip to Ireland. I've been wanting to report on that for a while. And also, as I'd mentioned, I'm going to be speaking into these eclipse energies and doing taking a bit of a ceremonial space uh, with you all to dream into this eclipse portal and of course, the equinox and eclipse portal because it's such a powerful combination of those two energies. Um, and talk a little bit about what's going on for the last quarter of the year. So that's what I'm going to be up to. Occasionally, I'm going to kind of check in and let more people in. I am going to start doing more live events and they will be a bit more organized. So I'm going to find people to help me with that so that I can have my attention fully focused. But for now, every once in a while, you might see me letting in more people because, of course, the more the merrier. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead then and just begin by just inviting everyone to just drop in. So let's just go ahead and begin by making this somewhat of a ceremonial container by really taking some space to root into this moment. All right, so I'm going to invite everyone to go ahead and close your eyes. And I'm going to invite you to put a hand on your heart. It's a very appropriate energy for this moment of the eclipse, or I'm sorry, of the equinox as the sun moves into the sign of Libra. Let's begin by placing a hand on the heart and just beginning to take a moment to let the breath just naturally drop and deepen, and beginning to feel that pressure of the hand on the heart and really sensing into that sensation of gentle holding that we can offer to ourselves in these times of just so much movement, so much activation, so much all around that is just swirling. And so we're going to just take a moment now to just bring that breath a little deeper and bring our awareness to the heart. And you may want to just allow your hands now to just gently settle on your legs, wherever they feel comfortable, as we continue to bring our awareness to the breath and into our bodies. And we're going to take a moment here just to pour blessings onto our bodies in this moment of so much change. It's so essential to do the simple things. And that simple thing can sometimes be first remembering gratitude for this clean air that we get to breathe, for the well-being of our lungs, and then also just to take a moment just to feel and sense into these beautiful vessels, this temple of our body that houses the soul, and just to bring a moment into again just have this sensation of imagining that you might even imagine it like it's raining here right now here, so you might imagine that there's these beautiful sacred waters, especially for those of you who are in areas as we have been that are in drought or that are dry. Just imagining that we have this water just pouring, these sacred waters from the sky just pouring down as a blessing onto our bodies, just cleansing, purifying, blessing our physical bodies now. Just take a moment to just feel that pouring, like a sensation of blessings, of love, of the nourishment from the heavens, just pouring down in the body, just offering blessings to our physical bodies now. And feeling how that begins to bring our bodies alive. Feeling where there's sensation in the body now. Where are you feeling kind of a tingling or a lightness or a brightness? and allowing our bellies to soften. And now opening our inner eye, opening our awareness so that we can imagine now that you can imagine this beautiful Mother Earth. Just see her in your mind's eye, this beautiful, sacred, holy Mother, Gaia, Pachamama, the many names we find for this beautiful sacred being. So just see planet Earth in your mind's eye, this beautiful jewel in the heavens. And I'm going to invite you to imagine the sun, the beautiful, sacred, living sun, our star. Just imagine the sun now above the earth and just sense and feel the magnetism between these two sacred beings. And here at the equinox, the medicine of the sun as it pours into the earth is especially erotic, is especially alive and awake. There is a magnetic energy between these two sacred beings, this primal masculine, feminine energetic. So as we feel the light of the sun, we can see that pouring onto the earth. We can now imagine ourselves on that Mother Earth. Place ourselves there, just feel and imagine and see and know that we are on Mother Earth, and just begin to feel that sun above us and just feel our bodies as well, just receiving this medicine, this energy from the sun. And we can feel that sunlight just pouring into our energy fields, pouring into our bodies and supporting us and allowing in more light, preparing us for this final quarter of the year. Filling our physical bodies with more light, filling the energy field around our body with more light. And we just receive that. Now letting that image just dissolve and bringing our awareness back to the breath and to the body. Now that we've come home more fully into this moment, come home into this sacred timing of the equinox, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to open your eyes, and we're going to go ahead and speak into a little more about what this sacred day is about. All right, so I'm so aware as I am offering this today that there are some who are listening who might be in the Southern Hemisphere. So when we talk about the equinox, we can talk about it as the fall equinox. We can talk about it as the spring equinox in the Southern Hemisphere. But this is the time, as we know, when we are really working with the first primary energy of the equinox is of sacred balance. And we can understand this, especially in this season, because this is when the sun moves into the sign of Libra. And of course, Libra traditionally had everything to do with finding that sacred balance. And of course, we also know that the light and dark is in equal balance today as well. So part of what I am going to go ahead and dive in, and I'll speak more about the fall equinox as we go. But part of what was really and has been coming alive for me, I'm going to begin moving into speaking into Ireland and talking about what had happened there. I think I am going to actually put myself on speaker just for a moment. Do that. Speaker view. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, so I'm going to begin to talk a little bit about Ireland. And so in this journey to Ireland, I'm going to give just a little bit of a short description of what this journey was about and what was so potent about it. First of all, just as a little bit of a frame. So in going to Ireland, I had gone with a group of individuals, and there were almost 150 of us, almost 200 at certain points. And in fact, I might share with you an image. I'm going to share with you a really fun image just to give you a sense for who I was with, because I want to share the kind of the magic of that, because certainly one of the big factors was that we we are living right now through a moment of a lot of Gemini. Jupiter is in Gemini. At the time that this was happening, we had a Mars was in Gemini as well. They were conjunct as we were beginning this journey. And so what we have right here is many of these individuals who had gone, we had all felt the call to go to Ireland for this 8-8 portal. And this was the fairy ball. So this was the celebration that we did after we had experienced at the 8-8 portal that we were on the Hill of Tara, which is a very sacred site in Ireland, where it is said that the high kings of Ireland were coronated. And there are many other reasons why the Hill of Tara is very significant as a sacred site. But we had prepared for several months. There were many days of training in meditation and different practices so that we would be sure that the medicine we brought to this sacred site at this very powerful moment was beneficent, that it was positive. And I'll share as I kind of zoom in here a few more of the individuals. So it was good. I think it's very, very positive and very healthy within spiritual communities to have a spirit of play. And so I was really, when I was considering going, this is one of the big reasons I found that I wanted to go, because there was this sense of massive celebration that we actually had a fairy ball and they took it quite seriously. And so this is the couple who organized the event, and I want to share their story and the reason why this is Z, Earth Star, and this is Shane, her husband, and this is their new little baby who was born there. I'm going to share some of this story because to me, this is what's often drawn me to individuals or to groups when we have an event on the land. There are many people who are having retreats or doing sacred work on the land these days. Um, and what I really love to see is when there is a lot of attention given to cultivating relationship with the place and with the people. And Z and Shane definitely did that. And so before we had gone to this event, what had brought them there, and if anyone isn't familiar with Z Earth Star, she's a young um, Canadian woman, and Shane is as well. He's a Canadian and he has Irish ancestry. And when they were pregnant with their second child, there were a couple of Irish women who they were great friends with, the seers, these women who had said that their baby was one of the high kings of Ireland who was reincarnated and who wanted to be born in Ireland. So this is part of what brought them there. So they arrived 2 months early. So they arrived and they had had the vision of doing this event at the Hill of Tara. So then they began to speak to many of the people in the area to try to be able to even access the site, because that's kind of unheard of. If any of you all have gone to sacred sites, or if you're aware of how it works when you visit a place like, for example, Glastonbury or Avebury, any of those regions, um, the people in those areas often they're inundated by many tourists, many spiritual tourists, and many different groups. And what I came to really understand at the Hill of Tara, and I'm going to actually shift the image now so that you can see the Hill of Tara. We can kind of tune into that as I'm speaking to you. I want to share an image of that. Excuse me. Actually, let me do it like this, because I want you all to be able to kind of tune into this area where we had spent, many months, and they had spent 2 months preparing for us to be able to do this. Again, to me, that kind of devotion is very, very compelling, um, because the land itself deserves that kind of tending and care and preparation, and the people of that land as well. So, right. Okay, I'm going to share. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share a little bit just so you can see images, so you can kind of get introduced to some ideas of what we had done there. And then I'm going to share my takeaways. All right. So that's basically how I'm going to do this. Okay. So here's the Hill of Tara. Okay. So, all right. So at this, when Shane and Z had arrived at this location, like many of us are visionaries, right? Many of us have big visions. And many of us want to make these kinds of very powerful, magical things happen. And my sense is that more and more we're going to see people making miraculous events, all around us that integrate the spiritual, and we're going to be doing kind of impossible things. However, there's what I find when we're talking about, so today what we're talking about with the equinox is balance. It's the balance point between light and dark, feminine, masculine, yin and yang energies. This is the medicine. It's kind of the middle way that we're looking for at the equinox. And so that was an enormous theme that I found coming up again and again during this event. So Shane and Z had arrived and they were planning to have their baby there. They're just both these warriors, right? But they started getting to know people on the ground and they were met by a lot of resistance. And the reason was because at sacred sites like this, there are many kind of invisible to the public earth guardians who are very, very serious about maintaining the spiritual integrity of these lands. And many of them have seen many groups come and go who are not fully prepared for the kinds of energetics that are present here or the kinds of spiritual practices that are needed so that you can hold the energy in a good way. And so Shane and Z met a ton of resistance so that by the time we actually got there and when we found ourselves on the Hill of Tara for the event, we were told in no uncertain terms that we were being watched, that we were welcomed onto the land, but that the way that we approached the land was incredibly important, and a lot of love and a lot of care was given, so that by the time we arrived, we were really deep, we were welcomed. But there was also that sense of, all right, be very conscious of how you're walking on the land. And, when we talk again about balance, I bring this up because we as a humanity, as I see it, today I haven't spoken in a group context for a long time. There are a lot of people who are going to listen later. So part of what this is for is to kind of speak into a little bit of what my larger sense of what's happening right now. Where are we as a species? What are we doing? I'm going to speak into that, right? And what's come alive for me over the last couple of years as the big theme is, how as humanity can we learn to mature beyond human supremacy? That's a term that Lynn Twist and others have kind of coined. And what I find interesting about that, and the idea is, that and I want to look at it with so much compassion that as a human species, many indigenous peoples would say that we are at an adolescent phase. The Kero would say this. There are many others who would say this, that as a species, by and large, with exceptions of some cultures who are, you could say in a more balanced relationship with the earth, and that we are by and large kind of adolescent as a species. And so we're going through massive growing pains right now. And so when we talk about balance, it's to just speak into this dynamic where we have been very self-focused on some levels, and we've been in this age of separation, you could say, or we say patriarchy, we can say an age of separation. There are a million ways to say this, and I'm going to speak more into this in a moment, we are absolutely moving back into a time of reunion, back into a time of interbeing, as Vietnamese monk and beloved peace activists would say, that we are learning interbeing. And part of that is not only with other humans, although we certainly need to learn that first, but also with all of life. And so when we were at the Hill of Tara, part of course, what we were working with was the ancestral wisdom of these lands. It was the many layers of mythic history and the history of the Irish people. We were working as well with in Ireland, and the individuals we were working with very much feel that the Fae are very much living beings. So for those of you who visited Ireland, you probably are very well aware of this, but that there are many who absolutely would perceive that when I say the Fae, I am referring to the kind of mythic beings like fairies, like mermaids, like dragons, these kinds of energies, these kinds of beings, and that they are in fact very real, and that we can connect with them if we're coming from a good place. So that was really some of the underlying perception of the group. And it was very interesting to be in a group that had this perception, and to know that the whole time we were in this group, that there were quite a number of people from Ireland, again, who were these kinds of earth guardians who are not often seen, who were with us. And we didn't necessarily know who they were, but again, they were observing what we were doing. But these individuals absolutely very much would say that the the elementals, the fairies, these other beings they're very much alive, and you can feel it when you're on the land. And so this understanding of the world behind this world as being very much alive, and the mythic reality as being very much alive, is all very present in that place. Um, the theme of sacred union, again, the balance between masculine and feminine, this balance dynamic that we're talking about, is a very alive. Um, it's built into this site. This is the Hill of Tara. It's a sacred site in Ireland, and it's again where the high kings were said to have been coronated. And if you look at the eight figure, the infinity symbol, this here is seen to be the womb of the goddess. And so it represents the sacred feminine, or the chalice. And this side, it represents the masculine. And this has the stone of destiny, which is right there. And that's the stone that it said that the high kings of Ireland were coronated. So you have the feminine and the masculine energies here that are held within that landscape. And the whole time we were together, there was just an enormous theme the whole time of sacred union. In fact, there were so many weddings that were happening all around us. So that was something we talked about a lot. So in speaking to the role of the masculine and the feminine, one of the big elements that came through in this event was the element of the sovereignty goddesses, and the way that, I'm going to share another image here. Many of you, if you've gone to Ireland, you will be familiar with these concepts. But let me share this. All right, this is Eru. This is a beautiful sculpture of Eru in one of the sacred sites we visited after Hill of Tara. And I'll come back to Tara in a moment, but I want to introduce her because she is one of a number of, anyone who's really studied Irish history will be familiar with the concept of the sovereignty goddess, which is very specific to that region, to that island. And she, Eru, is seen to be kind of the personification of the island herself. And so this statue is found in Usniak, which, if any of you are going to travel to Ireland, I highly recommend visiting. It was by far my favorite site. And the reason for that, in part, was because this is a central site in the island where many roads come together, and where historically all of the different clans and tribes would gather at Beltane on top of a hill, and they would gather there every year to kind of to make sure to keep the peace among all the different tribes. And one of the stories that we were told by a wonderful guide when we were there, as we sat on the top of this hill and we meditated and we felt into what it would have been like to have lived there at that time, was this one of the stories she told is that what the tribes would do is they would take children, I think probably between the ages of 7, 8, something like that, and they would actually adopt for a year a child from the other tribe. And this was a strategy to maintain the peace between these different people. Because, of course, if you bonded with a child, then you were less likely to go to war with those people. And what I deeply felt when I was at Usniak and when we were on this hill, when we connected with the statue of the goddess Eru, who again is seen as an embodiment of the land of Ireland. She's a sovereignty goddess. I'm going to talk more about the sovereignty goddesses as a whole in a moment. What I so deeply felt was how at this moment that we're living in right now, we are in need of that kind of counsel. We are in need of that kind of gathering where what is the sacred place where we can gather to cultivate peace between us here in the US, because there is so much happening in the US right now, as we can all feel in our bones. Astrologically, there are so many astrological transits that have been really bombarding us as a nation for the last number of years, and it's going to continue through the next few years. So in any case, Eru some would say that her name actually literally means peace. And there are different meanings for the word Eru, for the goddess, the sovereignty goddess of Ireland. But going back to the Hill of Tara, there and the high kings that would be coronated there, in the understanding of the ancient ones in Ireland, the sovereignty goddesses each represented a part of our. Now, Eru was kind of general goddess who represented the entire island. But there were other sovereignty goddesses who would represent different parts of the land. So, in order to become a high king, the Irish kings had to prove themselves to the sovereignty goddess, who was an embodiment of the land, and prove that they would tend to the people, they would care for the land itself, and then the king would be required to marry her. So the king would have to marry the land, literally. And so there was, again, that theme of sacred union. And this was something we had 3 days where we were at. We were literally at, I'm going to take this down now. So we had 3 days before we actually went to Hill of Tara, when we were deep in training to prepare to go to the Hill of Tara. And in that training period, we had listened to a number of Irish, a couple of women who are Irish seers and who had worked very deeply with some of these sovereignty goddesses. One of these women she had shared a vision that she had had, where she was shown by, I believe it was Maeve, one of the goddesses, that she needed to raise her fields. And this presentation that this woman offered, her name's Zoe, and actually the name of Zoe's business is also Eru, and I'll say more about that. But this vision that Zoe had was that it was a period in her life where she was really struggling with her work in the world, with what she was here for. And she had just had all these visions of these different sovereignty goddesses. And one of the goddesses had told her she needed to raise her field completely. And so what she had ended up doing was Zoe spent time, um, just really, as we do as women and as individuals who are on the spiritual path, just really dropping deep and asking, what am I here to do? And so what she began to notice, she began to see that in her native Ireland, that sheep, that wool was something that was always imported into the country. And so they would get all their wool from outside of the country, but she literally began to study the history of her community and discovered that in ancient Ireland, of course, the sheep were absolutely sacred, and the wool that they would spin was a very important part of their culture and of their history. But she was discovering that people at that point believed that the wool was too coarse, that it wasn't valuable, and so it was getting it had no value in the local market. And so since she discovered that, and in the work she was doing spiritually as well with the goddesses, she began to have the vision to create a business where she would bring together all the sheep herders, because there were quite a few still, but they didn't value themselves or what they did. So she began to bring them together. And then she met her husband, who was a sheep herder and a shepherd, and had a business. And so they now have this line where they are bringing back this understanding of the beauty and the sacredness of local wool and the deep mythology underpinning that. And it's a beautiful business that I highly recommend. And anyone who wants to, I will try to remember to send a link to that. But what was very interesting to me is that Zoe, who is a very important part of our community as we were there, she said she had never told anyone the story. She's a very public figure at this point. Their business is quite visible, but she had never before told the story of the sovereignty goddesses and of these visions that she had received. I'm getting chills saying that. So part of what I was really moved by in this gathering was how courageous everyone was to begin to really speak into these mysteries that we often don't feel safe to speak about. And that was true for the individuals from Ireland who were sharing as well. So Zoe was one of the individuals who spoke, and then another one of the speakers who I was partly drawn to Ireland to study with is a man named Rory Duff. And, I haven't written this in my newsletters, but people who work directly with me often know that in terms of astrologers, I don't actually follow, or there aren't a lot of astrologers I feel super resonant with, which is kind of an embarrassing, weird thing to say. Um, but there are some who that's probably true in any profession, right? Pam Gregory is an astrologer. I really do love to connect with her work, and especially who she highlights. And so it was through Pam Gregory that I began to listen to Rory Duff, because she had done some interviews with him, and he is what he calls a geobiologist from Bath, England. And he has studied the ley lines and the nodes and the dragon lines over on the surface of the earth over the past, I don't even know, I think it's a couple of decades that he's been doing these studies at this point. So he's studying and how I can explain kind of grids or ley lines or dragon lines or nodes. The best way to describe that for anyone who doesn't understand what that is to think about when any of you have gone to a acupuncturist, or if you work with Chinese medicine, you'll understand that the body has meridians or energy lines. And there are certain points on the body where if I put a needle here, it's going to connect with other areas of the body. And there are certain points where many of those intersection points come together, right? Where you can bring a lot of medicine to the whole body or to particular regions of the body when you put that acupuncture needle there. So when we are looking at sacred sites, for example, across the globe, a place like Chichen Itza or a place like Teotihuacan or again, Glastonbury, what you'll find is that those sacred sites are located on an area where several lines of very powerful energy are coming together in what you would call a node. And often, actually, some of the bigger structures like the pyramids of Giza or others, the reason they actually construct those things is so that they can hold that node in place. So that's one of the purposes of that. So, so Rory was there and he trained us over 2 days, probably 5 days worth of work. He was training us to learn about how the energy lines actually worked, how the nodes worked, and training us to meditate on those nodes so we would understand what we were doing. But he also, I highly recommend his work. I was drawn in part because what was happening for me leading up to the learning about this event on the in Ireland was that I had just learned that my grandfather was a dowser, that he would douse for wells. He was a cattle farmer in the Ozarks in Missouri, but I learned he would douse for wells. And so, of course, someone who's working with ley lines or dragon lines like Rory Duff, an individual like that, part of the work that they would tend to do is dowsing. Now, many of you, if you're healers, you know about dowsing because you work with a pendulum, right? So you'll use a pendulum as a physical object that will help you to know, if you're asking a question about your life, is this a yes or is the no, right? The dowsing, it could be the pendulum, for example, is an instrument you use to connect with the conscious self with the unconscious self to get answers for your questions. So a person who would have the ability to witch, they would call it witching sometimes, or douse for a well, is very well developed in understanding how to use that technology of connecting the conscious self with the unconscious self. And I had begun to learn about this through my grandfather, which I had no idea, but he started coming to me in dreams. So when I had learned about Ireland and I learned Rory was going to be there, that was part of why I decided to go. So Rory's work I recommend because it's very, very deep work. And it is about ley lines, it is about nodes, it is about all of these things. But he's also another individual who has a very comprehensive perspective on the nature of this turning of the age that we are in the middle of right now. And so a lot of what reverberated through my whole body while I was in Ireland and in the days following and the weeks following um, were a lot of the insights that Rory had shared with us. And one of the insights was another way of understanding what many of us think of as the movement into the age of Aquarius. Okay, so many of us would understand that. I mean, I think anyone here probably agree that we are living through what Joanna Macy, deep ecologist Joanna Macy would call a great turning, or what my teacher, Daniel Giamario, would refer to as a turning of the ages. And what many astrologers since the 60s have been saying is a movement into the age of Aquarius. Um, so I am of the mind, as many others are, that we are moving very quickly into full on age of Aquarius mode because Pluto is moving into Aquarius as of November 19th of this year. It's going to move into zero Aquarius and it's going to remain there for 20 years. So that is, to me, um, one of a number of indicators that we're saying we are going to move full on into Aquarius territory at a collective scale. We've already been dipping in and out for a while, but we're going to be full in by November 19th of this year. So that's a whole conversation. What Rory's talking about is he began to speak into the way that every 12,000 or so years, the Earth moves through what he refers to as the galactic current sheet. Now, I had never heard it spoken of in this way. What I have known as a shamanic astrologer is that the Earth at this time, and this can only happen every about 12,500 years, the Earth is located in the galaxy in such a way that it is aligned with the galactic equator, meaning that during the equinox and solstice points, you will have the Earth lined up perfectly with galactic center and the edge of the galaxy. So I understood that in an astronomical fashion. I knew that that's part of why we say it's the turning of the age. It's a major factor. It only happens every 12,500 years that our Earth is aligned to the equator of our galaxy in that way. But what I didn't realize is that there's kind of a physiological component to that. And I think for many of us who are tracking what's happening right now, two things that have been very big this year is that we are recognizing that, number one, that the sun itself this last year in 2024, I think everyone is feeling how 2024 is different. This year is, in terms of accelerated awakening, it is beyond the beyond. And I can tell you a million ways why I think that's so. But anybody who tracks spiritual teachers, you'll see it everywhere. It's like 2024 is the year, and you'll see it on a video and their faces like, it's like, everybody's freaking out about 2024. In any case, what I've come to notice in 2024 that is very significant in terms of earth changes has to do with the sun and the energy of the sun. So I'm going to get back to Rory in a second, but this builds into that. So what's happening with the sun is that we are at the sun has an 11-year cycle, a solar maximum cycle. And we are in that cycle now where it has its greatest geomagnetic storms. It's got solar flares. Many of you have been watching that and feeling that there's this immense solar energy that's literally coming into our Earth. It's very much impacting us. And so there's this solar energy that's very alive for us right now. And so when we look at the auroras, for example, and all of you know that there have been massive aurora energies at play, that is something we're actually literally seeing this massive physiological impact of the sun and the earth and the energies between those two beings. So part of what's happening is that we're feeling the solar energies in our bodies in a big way. It's really affecting us. And they don't talk about that very much. The scientific community doesn't talk about it very much, but we are electromagnetic beings. So of course, when the sun is going through this cycle, and it's much stronger this year than it ever has been before, or I shouldn't say before, but it's a very strong impact on our bodies at this time. More and more of us are starting to recognize that it's having a major impact. So, okay, going back to what Rory was speaking to, he was speaking into the way that when the Earth is moving through this portion of the galaxy, and when it's aligned with the galactic equator, it's literally going through a phase where, because of its location in the galaxy, the magnetic field of the Earth, that is usually pretty strong, is weakened. And so what happens when that occurs is that our Earth herself is receiving certain kinds of cosmic energies, light. I mean, I say cosmic and it sounds like woo, but literally our Earth is hurtling through space and it's impacted by different kinds of energies. And so we are being bombarded with a lot of energies that we normally wouldn't be. And so this again happens every 12,500 years. And what what Rory and others have documented is that at these times when this is happening, there is um, there is a massive shift in consciousness. So it's another way to talk about this, where we go through these cycles where we're again in a phase of where the focus is more on developing as an individual, developing sovereignty, and then we go into a cycle where it's more about unity. And this is just a repeating thing. So this is another way to talk about this moment that we find ourselves in. So one of the ways Rory has been, this is the fascinating part for me, is that one of the ways he's been tracking this is that for the last number of years, he would measure the energy levels at these ley lines, at these significant energy lines of the earth. And he's been doing this for years. And when he first started, he said that these energy lines on the earth their energy would amplify or increase the day before the equinoxes and solstices. That's what used to happen. But then over time, what would happen is that they would, it started to expand. So it wasn't just one day, it started to be 2 days. And then it was 3 days around the equinox and solstices. And then it was 6 to 7 to 8 days. So what was happening is that he was literally measuring the way that the Earth's energy field was amplifying and the energies were getting stronger. So again, what's coming through for me is that I hadn't realized how much, and our bodies are part of the earth. When we're on the earth, our bodies are an extension of earth. So literally our bodies are being massively impacted by all of these energies coming through. And so a lot of what he was sharing was that in this moment that we're in, our bodies are needing to acclimate. And so we're really needing to number one, spend a lot of time with the sun so that we can really bring this energy in because it's supporting us and shifting our consciousness. But we also need to be sure, and he's not the only one who's saying this. Pam Gregory's saying this. There are others who are saying this, but we need to be drinking water, making sure we're drinking enough water, making sure that we are eating healthfully, making sure that we are in community. It's all the basic things we know. But what's important about this is to recognize that many people are experiencing really intense emotional and mental symptoms because of these energies that are incoming. And so there are a lot of people are really overwhelmed. And of course, there's so much going on in the world right now that's so intense that adds to it as well. There's economic challenges, all of this that we're experiencing. But if people don't know that there is literally something that's happening physiologically in our bodies right now, that requires us to be really kind of slowing down and taking care of ourselves better, then it adds to the stress. So if people know that something is going on that they're a part of, and it's not that everyone would understand this by any means, but those of us who do have some sense for it, it's the thing that Rory has said that I really, really kind of struck me is he will often say that we live in a moment where we can either be the ones who need help or the ones who can help. And we want to be the ones who can help. But my sense of it is that many of us are going to have to move in and out of those zones. I know I've gone through phases now where I've had to ask for help in places I've never had to ask for help before. And also that I've been able to show up for people who are going through a lot emotionally and mentally. But basically what Rory would say, and this is one of these things where I'm like, well, I don't know how we would measure this or know this, but his sense is literally that by December, the energy lines of the earth are going to be kind of open, just generally open the whole way, that we'll be fully into the galactic current sheet. That's his sense. A lot of spiritual guides and teachers are saying that this December is going to be a big event. When I say event, it's again, it's what we're already in. We're in the middle of it already, but it's happening, right? We feel time moving differently. We feel our bodies expressing differently. Many individuals are talking about our light body, and many people in this circle have been talking about that or hearing about that for a long time. What is that? What does that even mean? It's certainly a part of the conversation. And again, what it has to do with is literally how much light our bodies are absorbing. It has to do with how much we have healed the stuck emotional patterns that are held within our bodies and within our energy fields. And so a lot of what happens when our bodies are receiving more of this intensive energy and light is that it's literally bringing to the surface what needs to be healed. And so this has been a very uncomfortable time for many, many people. And so again, for all of us, when we're going through that phase, and I think many of us are in communities where this kind of thing is being talked about, I find it extremely helpful to understand in that frame that when all this emotional intensity is surging up to the surface again, and I thought I'd been doing all my work, that part of what that is when you start to pay attention is, oh, okay, that's just me moving through this another, phase of letting in more light, more soul in the body. And so whatever has been held in this energy field is simply needing to be released so that more light can be held. Um, so that's what a lot of the conversation has been about, is the light body and amplifying and our how we are becoming more light in some way. We're becoming more buoyant, or some others would say that we're becoming homo luminous, right? So this kind of conversation, this way of seeing it, is we're hearing that and seeing that in a lot of different conversations with spiritual guides and teachers. Um, and what I've also been seeing and feeling within myself, and I'll be very curious to see how others are experiencing this, is that again, it's the equinox. We're talking about the balance between dark and light. Um, it feels almost as if, as we're moving more and more deeply into the age of Aquarius, I'm going to go back to 2017 is when I feel like we began to move through the portal that we're in now. There's a 2017 to 2024 window that has been a massive change. And I don't really know what 2025 is going to look or feel like. I have a sense, but there's something about this cycle, this 7-year cycle, that it has its own kind of quality. And I began to recognize this kind of earth, sky, woman energy that I began to talk about in 2017. And what that was is I began to recognize that that in some way, see it in charts all the time. We want to be very simple about it. Some people, some of us, more naturally orient to sky mysteries or the sky self. We're like, I'm a little star seed, or I'm like, I'm more Aquarian, more Pisces, more celestial, for example. And I really love to be in the light. I really love when I talk about light body, it's just like, yeah, that feels really amazing. Or, I just want to expand. I want to transcend. There's that sense of a comfort level in the sky realms, in the realm of spirit and transcendence. And then some others would tend to be a bit more in the earth realm. I'm being very simplistic here, clearly, right? So more oriented to the earth. And so, lives a bit more in the lower chakra centers, right? That's very natural for them. They're really deep, they're really earthy, they're really rooted. There's more of the connection to the ancestral lineages. That comes real easily. The simplest way I have to break this down is to say people who have more of the earth, like the water or earth signs, generally speaking, as moon signs. It's not true for everyone, but earth and water moon sign individuals tend to be more of the earth kind of realms of the earth, right? More comfortable to be in the 3D sometimes, or more comfortable. It could be more comfortable being in the body, more comfortable. It's not even just about being comfortable. It's like there's they're much more skillful in the realm of embodiment, one could say. So there are people who tend more to the earth, and people who tend more to the sky. And when you look at an individual's chart, for example, we're all very complex and multi-layered, right? But some individuals in particular seem to be here, even if your comfort level is sky, to really root down into the earth and learn to be in the feelings and learn to work with the ancestors and learn to move through the discomfort of density. And some of us who are more of that earth realm actually really need a lot more of that expansive energy, need to move into the light. But at this moment, we're all being asked really to come into mastery with both of those capacities. And so this is a big piece of what I keep seeing and feeling around me. And when I came back from Ireland, I had both experiences when I was flying back from Dublin. It was very vivid. It's one of the things I shared in my newsletter was more on the one end of things, where when I was in Ireland, I I felt the heart of the mother. I felt this gentleness. I felt this profound feminine love. And that energy has been very alive this year. I have seen it and felt it with several apparitions of Our Lady, of Mother Mary, that have shown up for couples, specifically a couple in St. Louis, a couple in Woodstock. Each of these couples has, it's interesting, it's been the man in the couple who saw a vision of Our Lady, and then he and the woman, his wife, they would together kind of discern her messages. In both cases, they've built kind of a sanctuary, to the goddess. And so the way that the mother has been showing up this year, and it's not just there, it's in many ways. There is this larger, very loving, kind of smoothing, nourishing, calming, feminine presence that is very alive right now. And I felt that in Ireland very strongly. The land herself, there was just a sweetness. There was, I think, a particular kind of innocence, I imagine, that in part is because the people in those lands of Ireland have been through so much. They've experienced so much in the way of oppression, and they've experienced so much in the way of healing, um, that, I mean, the goddess is very alive in those lands, no matter what. But it felt to me like there was a cultivation of soul, and there had been a winnowing away of falsity, through all that the peoples of those communities had gone through. And so there was a feeling of love, of sweetness, and of magic. That was the community as a whole, with Z, Earth Star, and Shane. I mean, they're very much a magical community. So what I spoke to and what I saw when I was flying back from Dublin was, I felt my guides just saying, pay attention to the way that you, at 144 people, were on that land of Hill of Tara, and we were there and we offered our prayers. We were part of a ceremony over about an hour that was beautifully constructed, where we offered our prayers for the world. And it just so happens that that's an area where the Mary and the Michael ley lines, two of the big lines that connect to many other important regions across the world. So our prayers, our meditations, our energies were being transmitted right across the earth. That's what we do when we go to sacred sites. So I was being shown when I was flying back that those prayers we had offered, that the prayers so many others all across the globe had been offering, that the visions that so many of us had been carrying for years and years and years, that they are happening, that it is unfolding. And there were many who were at that event, after it happened, and many of those earth guardians who were there on the land, and the people who are there in Ireland reporting it back to us now, who will say and do say that things are shifting and changing. They're feeling it. And there were many that said we were absolutely successful, that there was very positive energies that came from that event. Um, and generally speaking, many spiritual teachers and guides are saying at this time that we've already made it across whatever this abyss, this threshold is, that we're already, in some sense, on the other side. There are many who are saying that. So there was that aspect that I was tuning into, and that I was being shown many very practical, real ways. When I was on the plane, when I was coming back, I was being shown the places where people's hearts are already opening. We are absolutely changing. Um, I'll give one example. When I was on the shuttle going back to my car, the shuttle was absolutely full of people. And everyone was so friendly. I mean, there weren't enough seats, so people were giving up their seats for other people, where people were saying, okay, you can sit on my lap. We can do this. We can do that. I mean, people were exuberant. Like, there was so much love in that space. And this crossed many cultural and racial barriers on a level that was very interesting. So my experience with humans on the flight back, it was kind of like I saw my judgmental mind saying, okay, this is what's happening. This is what this person's like, based on their race, nationality, whatever. And then I was being shown, oh, no, 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 you have to erase that. You have to let people be who they are, be kind, be loving, and I had to watch my own mind. And I was just being shown, okay, you've got to deprogram that. Let it be beautiful. Let people be kind. Let people be who they are. Let these miracles unfold. and so your biggest challenge is going to be the patterns of mind that maintain the future that you don't want, right? So I was being shown that on the one hand. Then a very interesting thing that was happening the whole time I was in Ireland, a whole undercurrent, was I was being shown the places where I've had a lot of good girl conditioning that was absolutely inauthentic. And I was really having to face that and navigate that. So, um, so when I was flying back, part of what I was feeling, it's two very different things. And I think many of us are in this place right now, we're having to really see ourselves clearly. On the one hand, I was being shown where I was being judgmental so I could become more neutral. And also, I was being shown where I could just see the larger patterns that were unfolding. On the other hand, I was seeing the places where I leak a lot of energy by always trying to transmit positivity. And so I was seeing the places where I needed to actually be more authentic and let my face relax, let my body relax, not feel like I had to be this loving, kind, good, wonderful person all the time, but I could just be me. It's kind of hard to explain, but I wasn't smiling. I let myself not smile all the time. And that also felt like the goddess, a different aspect of the goddess that was like, just breathe, just relax. You don't have to hold the world on your shoulders. Like, I think many of us as spiritual people, we're kind of a little bit codependent in our spirituality because a part of us is continually exerting this, I'm going to bring all my love into the world. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I mean, it was just so I was feeling, and I wrote about this. I felt some undercurrent sometimes of like, wow, underneath that, sometimes you actually have anger or frustration or irritation or even rage. So, you need to like let yourself feel that too. Like you don't need to transmit it, but be with it, as you're traveling, be with it. So, as the light worker, I got to see my own, just be more neutral in observing my own patterns. And I also got to see the ways that the world's kind of already healing and taking care of itself. So it was a very interesting dynamic between those two. All right. Um, okay, it's 6 o'clock, and I've just been sharing so much about Ireland. What else feels important? So I am wishing I had more images, and I apologize for that. But hopefully I painted some of those in your mind. Trying to think of any others. So again, there's so much from when I was there, so many examples when we were on the land at these different sacred sites of um, of seeing where magic is real. Magic is real and it's all around us. Miracles abound. There's no shortage. So our point of focus is important. It's important to let ourselves feel and see that. Um, Again, at a personal level, when I came back, that secondary experience I had of needing to kind of relax and be authentic. And part of that authenticity is that I don't have to try to be nice and bright and shiny all the time. Like I can let go. Part of the reason is because everybody's waking up now. So this is one of the things that for many of us who have been these kind of light workers, starseed, whatever, who've been doing it for a while, it's a very interesting experience for us because we're actually needing to relax and say, okay, wow, what's my role now? Because it's already happening. So who do I get to be now? So that's kind of what I've been experiencing as well. So many of us are going through this kind of identity, like confusion. But I will share one other piece. I'm very curious because I want to give us time for community conversation. I'm really curious how people are experiencing this time, what's resonating, what other people's experiences are right now. Um, but I will say one of the things I'm wrestling with, and I'm just curious how this is landing for all of you, if you resonate. What I'm wrestling with is literally this experience where, um, again, the buoyancy or more light coming into my body, having these days where when I came back, I live in a really beautiful place and I was so glad to land. And there are all these beautiful trees right around the house and so many butterflies, so many hummingbirds. Like I could feel that I was bringing Ireland back with me and that the elemental, I see those beings as fae. I see them as their own beings, but I also see them as spirit talking to me as the elementals. So I had frogs and toads right by my door, like 10 of them under a bucket. Every time I'd go out, they'd be crawling around. I knew that they were, I felt them as more than ordinary, I shall say. So there were days where I was just, and I was in the sun and I just felt the magic of everything just pouring into me. And I just felt like I was listening to the land, and I would walk up the road and just say hi to the trees and just felt all this beauty and magic. And then I would have these moments where I could sit. This is a practice I was coming to, which was that one night I just sat and I just this is my meditation lately. I was just feeling all of the experiences I'd had over the last few days that had been full of beauty. And I let my body just saturate in them. I just felt myself bask in all the things. And I was just amplifying. This is one of the things Rory talked about, is he said that as humans, when we're doing meditation in groups on these nodes or in these areas, what's important is that we learn to amplify the intensity of our emotion, to amplify the sensation of joy, amplify the sensation of love, amplify the sensation of presence through different practices. So that's part of what I was doing. At the same time, I was reading a book called Unbound by this woman, Cassia Urbaniak. Now, this is a very different energy. You'll feel this when I shift. These are two different worlds of energy. So Cassia was studying with some of the most esteemed Taoist abbots and martial artists, like nuns and martial artists in China. And she was studying with them, and it was a very expensive thing. And this was her deep training. And so to pay for that, she worked as a dominatrix in a dungeon in New York City, right? This woman, Cassia Urbaniak, who, if you look her up, she's got a TED talk. It's really good. So this book, Unbound, is all about helping women to become more empowered. And because in her work in both of those spheres, she began to recognize that women, and she speaks to this in such a new way, she began to recognize the way that we as women are so conditioned to be good that we often find ourselves in what she calls the smush, or we get frozen. And she talks a lot about how even the most powerful women, women who have like gone through they've like busted through so many barriers that their grandmothers and their mothers would have never, been able to do. Even these women will go have experiences where a man says something to them on the street, or a relative says something to them, and like, oh, why aren't you married, or why don't you have children, or whatever the thing is. And, or the man, like, is flirting with her. And she just, no matter how powerful she is, she freezes. It's this thing where she doesn't know how to say the thing. And so she talks about why that happens and why this conditioning happens to us. In the book Unbound, which I highly recommend, and the work Cassia does, which you can actually you can look her up on Instagram as well. And she's got some really great reels where she demonstrates practices to empower women. But when I'm reading what she's writing, she speaks a lot about anger. She talks about rage and how it is that even those kinds of emotions, we as women can learn to navigate and use it as energy and channel it. But the way she talks about it is channeling it with kind of an undercurrent of love, but there's ferocity, and we're in our animal bodies when we do it, right? So these are the two energies. Is sometimes I'll feel that more sky self, just blissed out, watching the butterflies and just alive with the trees. And then there's the desire for that animal body to be very alive and also to have access to my rage on some level. Because when I look around at the globe, even though I do know everything, there's so much that's already coming alive. I also know that women are needed in our full aliveness to meet what's happening in the world with creativity, with love, with curiosity, but with full presence. So this is part of what I've been kind of struggling with, is how different those two energies feel. And I have no idea how they make a home together in one body. So I am going to actually open this to some questions for a moment, because I've been talking this whole time. I want a little bit of feedback. And then depending on what happens, then I'll kind of complete by talking a little bit more about the rest of the year. And we'll close with a little bit of a a guided meditation. Hope that sounds good. So I know many of you who've been on a lot of calls before. A lot of times people will just listen, but I would love some feedback. If anybody wants to speak, I'm going to put this on gallery view. I'm going to ask that the parameters be to just, take a couple minutes if you can to share a little bit of how this is landing for you. What in my words and my sharing feels alive, and what's been happening inside of your system um, this last year, these past months, that relates to some of what we're seeing and feeling. And maybe you can use the themes of balance, just whatever's alive for you. I'm very curious in this group, and I trust what people's experiences have been, just to hear some voices in the room.
Well, I'll just say what's coming up for me. Thank you so much, Tammy.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, ah, so I think this ferocious love that you talked about, and just being, really honoring what's coming up within oneself. And I'm talking in relationship between the masculine and the
Yeah.
feminine, and this dance between, well, what does the feminine mean, and what is the conditioning of the man who kind of expects a certain femininity or wants a certain femininity, and then there's this aspect of the ferocious part of us as women that just really wants to be authentic and show up.
Mm.
And so it's a beautiful dance. And what I realized, that there's a part of that ferocity that can, and it's totally love. And, it really comes up for me as total love. And yet it can be interpreted by the other uh, um, as critique or as
Mm.
judgment or as, um, they're not feeling safe in some way, especially, depending on their conditioning.
Yes.
So it's a really beautiful and fine line, I think, between, showing up as ferocious and also being so completely understanding of where the other person is coming from,
Mm.
and not being in this place of, well, I'm right. I mean, we're all right, from our different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm learning more and more about this way of showing up with the ferocious love, in terms of wanting to really get the other and listen and being that compassionate. And it's not as if I'm going to give up myself, right? But
Mm-hmm.
really, connection being first, rather than ferociously somehow being right.
Ah, yeah,
or
connection first. Yeah,
yeah,
connection first. Yeah,
love
exactly.
and connection, and that
Yeah.
porosity, taming it down in terms of how it gets expressed.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. I so appreciate that. I think that is it. I think what you're hitting there is so powerful because, again, at this fall equinox, when the sun moves into Libra, we're moving into Libra season. What is Libra really about? Libra is relational. Libra wants connectedness. So we're moving into this realm now of wanting that. But also, yes, that is that ferocity for connection, or um, is it this rage, or something that almost becomes performative? Because I think this is also part of what I sometimes see, is, and this is in the larger kind of sphere, is some of the rage or that kind of energy that's transmitted. I don't feel the connection in it. I feel like it's, again, the adolescent part of us, that, or even the pre-verbal, that's in a lot of pain and that's just kind of needs connection. Right? But when there's that love and there's that heat, almost I feel like a heat underneath it or inside of it, that wants to connect. Yeah, that feels really powerful. Thanks for sharing that. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think so. Is that, I think this is Faye. Faye, are you meaning to share something? Can't really hear you. not so sure. Okay. I'm not sure that she was wanting to be heard there. Okay. Yeah. Is there anyone else who wants to share about any of
I
these?
would just like to say, Tammy, what a beautiful and authentic and heartfelt um, rendition of your journey and your recent experiences. And I hope you continue with that strong heart orientation towards connection and any other like supposed to be is erased and
Oh,
just go straight from the heart. Really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Where are you coming in from?
I'm on Long Island, New York.
Okay, okay. So interesting. I flew into Long Island actually, and and there was a wonderful woman who was there, and it was very interesting in this event um to see the lands that were represented. I'm always fascinated by that and the way that we embody the energies of the land itself. Um, and that was a big part of it. It was obvious, I've been learning about gridding, earth gridding, which is part of what we were doing. It's part of the way we talk about this, right? And the way that people talk about it in terms of bringing our code somewhere. And that was what Z was seeing too, is that each of us who were called comes from a different DNA lineage and that we were all coming together to share something unique. And I'll also share that Rory, one of there was so much he shared, but one of the ideas that I deeply resonated with was that how important it was in this moment as we're transitioning, what he would call crossing the abyss, which I found interesting because doing work with Venus and with Inanna, which has also been my deepest work in the last 13 years, what I learned this last year and in the year that I've devoted even more deeply to that Inanna story, the story of Inanna, the goddess's descent, is that when she goes to the underworld, she in Sumerian, the underworld is known as the realm of the dead. Um, and that there's also a realm beneath that that is the Absu. It's the abyss. So it's it's the underworld beneath the underworld. So more and more, that's what I've been very interested in. I keep finding that the underworld beneath the underworld, and that connects as well to. I want to do another talk where I've got slides and I've got everything together to share some of the resources I've been using. But there's a young Hawaiian peony who I've been listening to, who I find interesting, and I've been kind of observing what he's teaching because so much of this resonates with what I've been learning over the years and working with indigenous communities. Because he comes from a 20,000-year lineage in Hawaii, and it was after what happened in Maui a little over a year ago that he started sharing about the inner waters that they talk about where their female ancestor resides and where the so that there's a lot of ways to talk about the inner water. I think of it now as the Absu. I think about it as the inner earth. So more and more in this year, I've been learning more and more and more about the place where um, the earth also has light. It's also like the Tuatha De Danann, right? They're connected to the Fae as well. So in Ireland, where in their mythologies, and we received a lot of those myths, too much to share. But that they would say that the Tuatha De Danann, who are the original kind of ancient peoples there, had made an agreement with the ancient Irish to say that they would be in the inner earth or in the realm behind underneath the earth or behind this world, and that the humans would stay in the upper world, right? So there are many, many stories um, about this inner earth or inner waters. And so to me, it feels like that's what we're crossing. That's what's shifting. Um, Oh,
heard somebody talking about, um, and I don't remember who it was or the specific context, but about aliens and people talking about things coming from, outer space. And they said, "Oh, they're going to be coming from inside the earth. It's from inside the earth they're
well,
coming."
because
And
it's waking up. Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and I just want to say that I've been talking about this myself for many years, that we are earthlings,
yeah,
that we are earthlings, that we are embodied in the earth. And that's where our spirit shines, is from
yeah.
the earth. And all of this, I'm I'm so done with the suffering of the body and the meat suit. I think that that's like
Yeah, what's up with that?
over. That's
Yes, the
over.
meat suit. Come on. Thank you. Yeah, I hear you. That's over. Absolutely. Well, because she is coming back. She is coming back through us. Yeah, thank you. Yes, earthlings. It's so funny. I don't hardly ever hear that word, but I love that word.
It allows us to um, embrace the juice of life.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you so much, Tammy.
Yeah, you're so welcome. All right. Does anyone else want to share? Kristen, hi.
Yeah, I'd love to share. Thank you so much for this evening. Really quick, I connected with Souza recently about some healing on my land, and then your event showed up today, so it was just so timely as I worked through that process. And one of the words that has been in my focus this year has been sovereignty. And so I loved
Yes.
hearing about the goddess Eru, and something you said about developing sovereignty and then that next cycle of unity. It was almost like this light bulb went off of like, yeah, there's building blocks, right?
Yeah.
Getting to that place, sharing with others. So that's been really present with me of developing my own sovereignty and then helping others reclaim their power, amplifying the love. And so that
Mm,
that is really resonating as well, that ability to amplify presence and love and really expand and feel into that in order to bring in more of the light in the energies that are going on so that we're
yeah.
not getting so tousled in the waves, but really just feeling into. And so I've been sort of like, well, what is this for? Or what's happening next? But it was just that light bulb moment of, oh, yes, like connection, community, unity, energy coming forth as a result of this work. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful.
so beautiful.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, that's so important. I love you saying that because I think that is part of what I'd been sensing similar, just that as women, it sometimes takes so much to become fully sovereign and to heal codependent patterns. I mean, it's just real. It's a challenge. And this is part of what in the Buddhist community was really coming through at certain points where, to be a female and a Buddhist, sometimes Buddhism is problematic because we're already to cultivate a strong ego container and a strong sense of self is already challenging. Let's be honest for women. So in spiritual communities, it can be seen as negative, and we need to cultivate a sense of self. And yet, why do we do that? It's not to just be these rigid little separate beings. It's so that we can co-regulate with other sovereign beings. And yes, and what Rory was saying that I loved was this, it's like this having groups of people at these nodes, and each person brings their own gift and skill and life experience. Everybody's got and that's what happened at Hill of Tara. 144 of us, and when we got on there and we had headphones, so we were being guided with certain meditations during certain parts of it. um, and actually one of the women who was an earth guardian there, this beautiful woman, Tracy, she'd had a vision the night before that she should play Sinead O'Connor's song, this is to honor you. And just, I mean, I don't know if you all I've loved Sinead since I was like 18, I mean, just heart medicine. And so we played that, and I was standing on the male side of Hill of Tara, and it was just like tears, just tears. And because Sinead, I mean, she was so present with us. And it had been a year to the day that they'd had her funeral. So in any case, that's what we did as a group. Each of us, we just tuned in, and some of us were moving our bodies in particular ways that we were called. Some of us were toning in particular ways. Some of us were meditating, but it's like the thing I always do by myself when I'm out there opening the directions and the sound comes out or the movement comes out. We got to do it together, right? We all knew this language. And it was also practical. You know, I knew some things about the Venus cycle. Somebody else knew something about, you know, toning. Someone else had a keening practice that was potent at the start, the stone of destiny. So we all came with our own just state of being. And then we all came with these specific skills and gifts, and also our own body's unique capacity to receive and transmit sound or movement and frequency in the way that only our body could. So that was very powerful and very beautiful to have that experience. So I think that sovereignty is important on that level too, right? But I think sometimes when we say sovereignty, we are a little confused because we're comprised of a million different beings. So it's very mysterious what that means. Yeah. Thank you, Kristen.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And yeah, is there anyone else who wants to share? I thought Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
I'll go. I just came off of a workshop, so I arrived late, so I look forward to catching up. But what really struck me was what you said about those moments of freezing and thawing. And I mean, I just go all the years I have dedicated to sovereignty, and those moments can still come up. And so there was something about you mentioning that just shone a light on it, because I realized that I'm probably not the only woman who would go into a little shame attack
Right.
with those moments, and they were tied together.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, you're so not alone. I think we've all experienced, and what you brought up is so important because it's not just that we do it in the moment, but later it's just like, I should know better.
exactly.
Why did I
Yes.
do that?
What did I do? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and then you feel like a 5-year-old again or whatever.
Right, right. Yeah,
Or yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
yeah. So just to have the light on that
Mhm.
with the compassion is beautiful. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, compassion is huge. Anyone else? Should we go ahead and kind of round this out? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead, and it's actually that we're almost at the hour. So I think what I might do, are people interested in having a separate event with slides where I talk about the last part of the year, doing something about that? I would kind of like to treat that separately. I think that might be a good thing because there's a lot. There's a lot. So why don't we do that? And then why don't we just take this time then to just drop in one more time to just really tune into these equinox energies. And yeah, let's do that. Okay, I'm gonna just take you through a little guided meditation. All right. I'm gonna invite you to close your eyes once again and take a good breath. You might even kind of move your body wherever it wants to move just for a moment so we can come into the body and feel the body with us. And really feel, take a moment to just even maybe let your arms just hold your body in a way just for a moment. Just that, again, that thank you. We get to be in these bodies that more and more our bodies get to experience the pleasure of our presence within them. And so really taking a moment to breathe into that and acknowledge that, love that. And now taking a moment to drop into the body and take a moment to open the inner eye. And I'm going to invite you to actually kind of imagine you can see yourself over the course of your day. So see yourself in your mind's eye when you wake up in the morning, see yourself going about your day. And as you're doing this, with holding it with tremendous compassion and love, we're going to just take a moment to really tune in and see ourselves and see where, with the eye of seeing, where am I really focusing my energy attention? Where am I? And having the intent that we see where maybe we are balanced in one way, we maybe might want to balance a little further in the other way. Again, this is not judgment. This is a neutral space to kind of, with your mind's eye, see yourself going through your day and what you're doing over the course of your day, and with gentleness and love, like as if about 2% change you want to make happen, to see where in the course of your day you might be a little further over in this direction and you want to move the other direction. Just seeing ourselves with love, with clarity, open to a place where our hearts and our minds can help us say, oh, wow, maybe my life is a little over here, and maybe I can gently move it a little over here. And then as you imagine yourself very gently and easily shifting your attention, your energy, your focus in a different direction, just beginning to feel that in your body. How would it feel just slightly to shift so that you bring balance from over in this direction to this other? And you can't do this wrong. Okay. And then we're just going to allow that to dissolve. Just trusting any little thing we saw or felt there as a little seed. This is a very gentle exercise. I think there's so much that's happening naturally right now. We don't need to work very hard. Honestly, I don't feel. I think we can gently be with ourselves. So just breathe. And I'm going to invite you to put your hands on your body now, wherever they want to be, wherever your body's wanting those hands to be present. Once again, putting a little pressure on there to send love to the body, offering gratitude to Mother Earth, offering gratitude to the sacred sun. Once again, greeting these two sacred beings, the beautiful light of our star, of our sun, streaming down. Beautiful Mother Earth, receiving that energy, our bodies receiving the light of the sun. Thank you to all of our beloved guardians, guides, allies, angels, fairies, spirits of the land, whole healed ancestors who have been here with us, and for every beautiful soul in the circle. So as we close today on this sacred day of equinox, may each of us experience just that beautiful balance of that deep, rich, loamy, dark, earthy medicine of being an earthling in our bodies. Just that pleasure of this rooting into the experience of being on the earth. And also to experience that expansive and sometimes ethereal being of this light and expansion and magic, and watching the butterflies and just feeling these energies of depth and of light, of darkness and of brightness, and just honoring and acknowledging with so much love the incredible gift and pleasure it is to be incarnate, to be in a body in this moment in time. So offering gratitude and love for ourselves, our courageous, beautiful, bold souls who chose to incarnate now. Taking a breath as we come back into the room. And one of the ways, wonderful intuitive, I love Nancy Rebecca likes to do this, that I sometimes recommend, is that you can say to yourself aloud or internally what your age is, what your name is, and what the date is. So I'd say, I'm Tammy Bronk, 51 years old, and the date is September 22nd, 2024. That's present timing. So we come back. So here we are. So thank you everyone for being present. So good to feel you, to see you, and so much love. All right, we're going to close right on time within 2 minutes. And if everybody wants to just unmute yourselves as we close. And have a beautiful night. Happy equinox. Happy fall.
Happy equinox. Thank you.
We're so happy.
You,
Thank
big
you.
love, happy equinox.
You.